I'm starting this video a little bit differently because I'm talking to you through the internal camera on the DrivePro 520. Now this is a dual camera dash cam. We've got one that points out to the windscreen. I'll show you what that looks like now. And then we've got the one pointing into the vehicle, which is of course the one that's recording me. Now the idea with this is it's perfect for someone driving a taxi. As long as of course they're allowed to film inside the vehicle, this would show what was happening all the time that they were driving around. So as well as getting the typical dashcam protection to show you what's happening in the event of an incident, inside the vehicle, you've got footage of that as well. Now, lots of taxi drivers do get in touch with me. They want a camera like this because, of course, there's always stories going on about people assaulting people in vehicles, or maybe even the taxi driver themselves gets assaulted by one of the passengers, and they'd like evidence of that. Of course, it's quite a dangerous job driving a taxi around at night time. So you need a dash cam that, as well as being able to film in the day, can get good quality vision inside a dark car or vehicle taxi cab at night time. And that explains why I'm wearing light pink at the moment, because I'm not actually wearing light pink. I'll flip you over to another camera to show you what the colour of this actually is. It's kind of a light green. Now why is it showing up as light pink on this camera? Well, that's because it's got no IR filter on the lens. Now you might think that's something that's missing, it's a mistake, but it isn't. It's deliberate. It's so that the camera can film in the dark. The infrared that the camera puts out through 4 little LEDs around the lens can illuminate the inside of the vehicle, and then at night time it can see basically in the dark, which a normal camera with a filter on the lens couldn't see that. But the problem with that is, with having no IR filter, messes up the colours a little bit, which is why it looks like I'm wearing a nice light pink number, which of course I'm not that there's anything wrong with light pink. Now before I start properly with the video, I just want to do something for the people that are new to dash cameras. First off, welcome, and second, you might find this next part useful, and I suggest you press pause when the screen full of information comes on. And here it is. These are questions that people tend to ask when they don't really know about dash cameras, such as, will the camera automatically start and stop recording? Will it loop over the oldest footage? It's a little bit like going into a car showroom and asking the guy, does it have a heated rear windscreen, or does it have seat belts? These are all pretty common features that you should find on every dash cam. So if you've got the information off that screen, then that gives you a good head start, and we can move on with the rest of the video. Now, as far as the Transcend DrivePro 520 goes, the headline features are the 1080p camera that faces out, the 720p one that faces in, built-in GPS and Wi-Fi, the infrared night vision of course, and inside the box you get a 32 gig UHS-1 class micro SD card. There's some more specs on the back of the box for people that want to know about the sizes and weights and things. Now here's what I got inside my box. I believe you can have a suction cup version or an adhesive mount version. Of course mine's got the suction cup. I've also got that micro SD card in there. The power lead comes with a 4-meter wire which is approximately 13 feet, terminated in a right angle USB plug, and on the other end of there the adapter that goes in the accessory socket can go anywhere from 10 to 30 volts incoming, and convert that of course to your 5 volt USB 1 amp power. We've got the warranty card for the 2-year warranty, and we've got a quick start guide which is in multi languages, and as far as the UK one goes we've got 6 pages or so there. All nicely illustrated, and pretty simple camera to use this one really, and of course there will be a full guide available online, I'm pretty sure, although I didn't need it. Pretty glossy camera. We've got a chrome ring around the lens there. It's not the kind of thing that you can hide away very easily. We've got the camera on the back here which you can see can be rotated. In fact you can get it all the way round to point at the front. In fact it points slightly inwards, and then you can go all the way anywhere in between, so you can have it pointing sideways if you want, but more commonly of course you'd have it pointing back into the passenger compartment. Along the bottom of the screen here we've got the 4 buttons which will correspond to the things on the screen, a little LED there to tell you when it's recording. There's the mount that the suction cup goes into, so I'll just clip that into place. You can probably buy the adhesive mount as an optional extra, but of course once you've got that stuck in a vehicle you can't take it out, whereas with this you can keep moving the camera out of your vehicle, which might be quite useful given the size of the thing. Those suction cups are a little bit small, quite neat, but I don't think they've got as much suction as I'd like. And we've got an emergency button on the bottom there, that red button. If you tap that, it'll lock the file that's currently being recorded. So we put the micro SD card into the camera here, and we'll also plug in that USB lead. You can see USB Mini B goes straight up there, so you can route it around the headlining nice and neatly. As I mentioned here, quite a large unit, especially with the suction cup on, but once we take that off, we'll just switch it on and just have a look at what comes on the screen. So you've got to hold it down to get it switched on. Of course, in a car, when it's powered up, it automatically starts, as you'd expect, but this is just to use it on the built-in battery. It does have a battery, won't last long on that battery, of course. You can see there we've got both cameras on screen. We've got the rear one in the top left-hand corner. So looking around the screen, we've got the record indicator at the top, how long's been recorded, what mode we're in. It's looking for a GPS signal, that's the flashing arrow. Microphone's on, battery's nearly run down, you can see at the top right there. So I think we better put some power in this one, otherwise we're going to end up going flat before we get anywhere. So I've just plugged in some USB power here. You can see it's charging at the top right there now. So let's have a look quickly at these buttons. Well, the bottom left one turns the Wi-Fi on. The second one along gets us into the videos we've recorded, normal, emergency or snapshot. So normal's your normal video. Of course, emergency is the stuff when you press that red button on the bottom or it receives a shock. And snapshot would be photos that you press with the button on the right. Photos are just image stills, same resolution as video. Notice I've got A and B down the screen here, A and B. So A is the front camera, B is the rear. Both clips start and stop at exactly the same time, of course. So if I press on an A clip here, you can see that's the video from the front camera. See it counting up at the top right up to 3 minutes and 1 second. I can pause it, I can lock that file, I can delete it, or go back to the menu. So if I look at the B clip, that's the internal one of exactly the same time. Again, 3 minutes in length, of course, and we've got the same options across the bottom there. So that's the basic operation of the camera sorted. Let's have a look at some video that I've recorded with it, and as always I've got some sample clips available that you can download and watch on your own computer that will look better than these do on YouTube. Now the camera records in 1080p looking forwards, and it records in 720p looking into the vehicle. Now, as far as this video quality goes, looks beautiful, looks really nice on my screen here. I hope it looks the same on yours. Of course, we have this issue in winter of the low sun. You can see the shadow of the vehicle in front of it, and that means at certain times you'll find yourself driving into the sun. When you do that, sometimes it ends up going a little bit dark. I'll show you on this next clip here. As I go up this hill here, heading up in towards the sun, and it's adjusted the exposure down and made things a little bit too dark, I think. Now, there is quite a lot of sky in shot, but there's also quite a lot of road. It's about 50-50. That's the view inside the vehicle, though. You can see the sun was really in my eye, so you can understand the camera having a little bit of difficulty coping with that. But I will show you, on the right-hand side here, you might not see him, but there's a hiker walking down the road there. In fact, I'll show you on the internal camera. I'll slow it down. Look on the left-hand side. There he is, and there he is behind the car there. So it just shows you that when you darken things down, sometimes you can miss things on the video. Anyway, as I go past this open gate area here, look for the jump, and there it was. Approximately 1 second is repeated at the beginning of each clip from the previous clip. That's so you don't miss anything, but of course when you stitch them together you get those little bits of jump backs in the video. Now you might notice along the bottom of the screen there's a load of dashes. That would be the GPS information. However, the camera hasn't yet got a lock onto the satellites. It does take quite a while to do that sometimes. So moving away from the external 1080p camera for a second, just talking about the internal 720p camera, you can see it is really just designed to record what's going on inside the vehicle. You can just about make out what's happening through those windows, but really it doesn't get a good quality image due to the exposure. Another thing I should mention, when the camera will lock onto the satellite, you'll get the GPS information on the bottom of this video as well, and of course it records sound on the internal clips just as it does on the external ones. So not too much happening internally, so let's look at some of the 1080p footage I got from the external camera. You can see it's really good quality this. I've got a few different lighting conditions I'm going to show you. One thing people sometimes worry about is whether you can see other people's registration numbers. Well, I've got to say, in the dark with a lot of glare, you're not going to be able to see them on this camera or pretty much any other camera that I've tested. I mean, you try reading one of these reg numbers now, you'll have a lot of problems. Even if you've got a 4K camera shooting at massive high frame rates, it's not really going to capture that. So don't expect dash cameras to work miracles. But As far as the image quality goes, for low light conditions, this camera is pretty good. It's not the best of any that I've ever tested, but it is pretty decent. In fact, let's have a look at this traditional junction I tend to go through with all the cameras so you can compare them like for like. You can see it's doing quite well here. It's a well lit area, of course, because of the street lights and the shops and things, but it's nice and clear. You can make out exactly what's going on. And as I show you a few more seconds of footage, you can see at the bottom of the screen there, we've now got the GPS lock, and it's telling us the miles per hour at the right hand side there as well. Now I'll show you in the menus where you switch it between kilometers and miles per hour, but if you want to switch off that indicator, you're going to have to switch off that entire timestamp at the bottom. You can't just turn off the speed indicator. But here it is in a very low lit area, no street lights at all. You can make out the centre of the road, you can see if any other cars were coming, so it's pretty decent. Now that rear camera does have 4 infrared LEDs set around the lens that light up automatically in the dark, and that enables it to illuminate the interior of the vehicle. So let's have a look at some of that footage. As you'll have noticed, I'm in black and white, which is of course how it looks with the IR LEDs. I'll flip across to a normal camera, a Sony music camera thing that I've got, just to show you what that looks like in the same light, because this is pretty much pitch black other than the LCD screen on the camera, which is just lighting me up slightly. Now let's just see how well these LEDs light up the interior of the vehicle. Obviously I'm sat nearest to the camera, so I'm going to be quite well lit up, but let me sit in the other 2 seats in the back and then in the driver's seat, and we'll see how well it lights up that area. Okay, so that's how the camera works in the dark. Definitely better than a normal camera, but I still think there's room for improvement. If they were to have those LEDs, those infrared LEDs, have a wider spread of light, you'd definitely be able to see more inside the vehicle. Now those tests were done in complete darkness. When you're out on the road, more often than not, you will get a little bit more light coming into the vehicle from shops and street lights and other vehicles, which does make the difference between this camera and a normal camera less noticeable. But really the camera can see when it's completely dark, whereas the other one can't. One thing I should mention, the night mode is automatic, cannot be switched off. Those IR LEDs are slightly visible to the human eye, and the night mode sometimes comes on during the day when there's plenty of light. It's a little bit oversensitive. Now I found positioning the camera in my car quite tricky. As you can see, it's a large unit. It wouldn't really go on the right hand side of my rear view mirror because that was in my line of sight, so I had to put it over on the passenger side, but of course that would be in their line of sight. And if you have any thoughts about using this as a security camera, please pay attention to the gentleman walking around the outside of the vehicle. Try describing this chap to the police as being the guy who scratched your car. Not much to go on there, I don't think. Now, as we saw earlier, the interior camera can be rotated quite a way, which means, of course, on a right-hand drive vehicle, you could either record the passenger or what's going on inside the vehicle. More use, though, in a left-hand drive vehicle because you could point it out of the driver's window. There are some people that have got in touch with me and asked, is there a camera that could record any altercations with the police? Well, this would do just that job. Good evening, sir. Seems like you're in a little bit of a hurry. Where's the fire? Of course, there are other uses for the camera. You might find that you just want it pointing out of the side window. As you can see, it gets a pretty decent image that way, and it enables you to get 2 different angles of your driving. And of course, nothing to stop you putting another camera in the back of the car and have it point out the other side and the rear. Entirely up to you, of course. Right, I just want to spend a couple of minutes going through some of these setup options. So if we look at the resolution first of all, we've got a slightly confusing choice of having FHD plus 480p or 1080p plus 720p. So let's see what that means. Well, the first one is 1920 by 1080. That is what they call FHD. And then 1080p is actually 1440 by 1080. So those are your 2 different options. If we look at the bottom set, you can see we've got a 14 megabits a second on the front camera and a 7.07 on the internal, which means that 3 minutes of driving will take up 510 megs on your card, which means 6 minutes is about a gig, which means a 32 gig card, which is the maximum size a camera can take, will just hold 3 hours worth of driving footage. We'll quickly skip through some of the other options in the menus. So your video lengths, the 1, 3 or 5 minute options. You can disable that timestamp as we mentioned earlier on, which also disables the miles per hour indicator and of course the GPS coordinates. And over the page we've got the G sensor or the shock sensor. This is something that I had to disable because I found that I was getting an awful lot of locked or emergency files on the card. It will allow up to 30% of the storage to be locked or emergency files, but I found that I was just recording too many of them, so I had to switch that off. Now the display you can have showing both cameras or just the front camera or just the rear camera, and of course you can have the display blank as well, which you want to do in the dark because you don't want it lighting up your face while you're driving around, and you can pick 1 or 3 minutes on there. As far as the delay power off goes, once the camera has stopped receiving power, you can get it to record for a further 10 seconds or 30 seconds before it shuts down. You can display the speed in miles per hour or kilometers per hour, but as I mentioned before, you cannot switch the speed indicator off without switching off the entire timestamp, as you can't switch off the IR LEDs at night. And I'm just flicking through the languages there to show you what those are. Now I'll show you how the app works. First off, turn on the Wi-Fi at the bottom left there. You can see it showing Wi-Fi on. And of course we've got the little Wi-Fi indicator at the top of the screen there as well. So you get your smartphone, connect up to the Wi-Fi that's being broadcast by the camera, download the appropriate app, load that up, and then the app connects up to the camera. Now of course you're really doing this so you can download files off the camera, but as you can see I've got a live feed on the camera there. Quite a delay on that with it coming over Wi-Fi. Now you can go into the setup options on the camera here. Of course you can't see anything on the screen on the camera itself anymore, so you have to do it on the app now once you're connected over Wi-Fi, and you press a little cog wheel at the top right there and you get into the same setup options as you can get into on the camera itself. There's really no point in doing this because all the exact same options are here, nothing different. So of course the main reason for connecting up over Wi-Fi is to download the video files that are stored on the camera without having to connect up to a computer. It's not something I ever really enjoy doing, and on this particular occasion it crashed the app every time I did it. I noticed my camera had firmware 1.1.0. On the website there was available a newer firmware 1.2.0, so I updated that, and after I did that I didn't have any more problems with the app crashing out. Although I don't really enjoy copying files over Wi-Fi because it's just so damn slow. You can see here I'm actually trying to play the video file that's on the camera itself over Wi-Fi. And I've streamed enough to enable me to play 6 seconds worth of video. Now this is a 3-minute long file, which is another good reason to make sure you record shorter files, 1-minute ones, if you plan on transferring them over Wi-Fi, because they just take so long. Now if you've got no other choice, yes, you can download them to your device this way, and as long as you've got enough patience it will do it. However, I would much rather connect the camera up to my computer, take it out of the vehicle, plug it in with a USB port and use it as a SD card reader. However, if you didn't want to do that, you wanted to leave the camera in your vehicle, then just take out the micro SD card, put that in an appropriate reader and plug that into your computer instead. Regardless of which option you choose, you should end up with some files on your computer that will look like this. Now the system folder is where you put any firmware updates. The other folder is where the video and photo files are stored. The DCIM are the snapshots, the E-video are the emergency video files, and the N-video are the normal files. You can see here that every file starts off with the date and then the time, and also listed as A or B for the individual cameras. If you want to view any of those files in conjunction with the embedded GPS data, then you can download an app from the Transcend website, and that looks like this. It's not a particularly sophisticated app, and it's just for Windows. Some people prefer to use a piece of software called Registrator Viewer, and that looks like this, and that has a lot more information and ways of manipulating the data that the camera has got in those video files. And if you run a Mac, you might want to use a piece of software called Dashcam Viewer, and that looks like this. If you're interested in buying a Transcend DrivePro 520, there's purchasing links up in the video description, and up there you'll also find links to downloadable sample clips. So there you go, that's my review of the Transcend DrivePro 520. Quite an unusual dual dash cam, this one. I think more suited for left-hand drive vehicles due to the way the lens twists, and also it's quite a large unit, so I think you'd need a vehicle with quite a large area of glass at the front to be able to position it somewhere where it's not in the way of the driver's vision. Now, I did mention throughout the video that it might be useful as a camera for a taxi driver. Of course, that's on the proviso that you're allowed to use a camera where you operate your vehicle. If you're not, then please don't. Don't rely on some guy on the internet to tell you what to do. Anyway, that's it for the moment. As always, thanks for watching.